Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
What's going on, Hawkeyes?
Welcome to the show, sir. We have Ryan Terry tonight, former running back.
Glad to be here. Two great guys.
I wanted to go through on how you got to Iowa.
I started writing notes for a book, the different phases of my life regarding football. Dream it, speak it, live it. And how I came up with this is like the different phases of my life regarding football. And it's very applicable to this story. My father got out of the military. I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My father's a former Green Beret. So when he got out of the military, we moved to Omaha, Nebraska. My father took me to a Pee Wee football game. I was 6 and I was watching 9-year-olds play. One team had on red and white like the Nebraska Cornhuskers, right? And Nebraska was my first college team I loved. When I was a kid, there was a guy by the name of Keith Stewart from my hometown in Steubenville, Ohio, that was actually a fullback at Nebraska. My dad used to take me up there a lot and go into the locker rooms. More specific to this first game that I ever saw, I was 6 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm out there watching. The one team has on red and white like the Nebraska Cornhuskers. The other team has on blue and gold like Notre Dame. And I'm watching this on the red and white team. He's the smallest kid on the team. I believe they were 9 years old. I'm watching this kid play, and he's the smallest on the field playing his heart out. I knew I wanted to play football. I always tell people, I wish I could go back and meet this 9-year-old kid because he inspired me. My journey starts there. I got confirmation from my parents. This is the dream part of my life, right? So I'm sleeping with a football. My dad is coming through the door. I'm, tossing the football with him. Anybody I could play football with, I'm trying to do it. They thought I was having seizures in bed because I'm running the football in my sleep. I was a bedwetter for a lot of my life. But all of my dreams, it was always halftime at a football game. I was standing at the stall, getting ready to go back out and play. Before I knew it, I'm waking up, peeing on myself. Fast forward to junior high, my life was one of a late bloomer. In 7th grade, I was on the B team that we called reserves. I was telling people at 12 years old, I was going to play professional football. And kids laughed at me. Multiple people have messaged me through Facebook at different times and said, I remember you being 12 years old, walking around the school telling people that you're going to play professional football someday. I look at those junior high phases, what I call the speak it phase. Fast forward into my freshman year in high school. My father was a Green Beret, a former school teacher. He didn't play about grades. I let the 9 weeks get away from me. I get a B and straight C's, which is unacceptable in my house. I'm telling my buddies, my dad is going to kill me. They're like, oh, man, you're going to be okay. I was like, don't call. Don't come by the house. I'm dead, man. I'm outside until the next grading period. My dad comes home, and I'm hoping he forgets it's report card time. But like clockwork, he calls my brother and I to the table. My brother's a year older. My dad calls us to the kitchen table. My brother had straight A's and a B. Their conversation is joking, throwing fake punches. Come on, just get that B up to an A. He says, I'm proud of you. So my brother leaves. My dad sees my report card, looks at it, looks at me 3 times. I always tell my dad, this was the best discipline I ever got. He quietly says, son, let's revisit your goals. So are your goals still to go to a Division I school and play professional football? I say, yes, sir. So my dad cracks a smile, and he's so calm. And I'm not expecting this out of my dad. He said, let me tell you about the next 3 to 4 years. You got some great friends. You guys are great guys. He said, you're going to have a lot of fun in high school, but you're going to graduate. Son, we ain't better than nobody. I'm from Steubenville, Ohio. He said, you're going to work in one of the steel mill towns. You're going to marry some girl locally. You guys are going to have 2 or 3 kids, work in the mill for 25 years and retire. That's your life. So you're going to live a good life. But he said, son, you ain't going to college with these grades. He gets up from the table, drops the report card. I remember it helicoptering down. I sat at that table for 5 or 10 minutes, but it seemed like 2 hours. I knew I was never coming back to that kitchen table with those grades, and that changed my life. If my dad acted more explosively, I probably wouldn't have got it. He was just like, hey, dude, this is your life. Everything I did was to make it in football. As a freshman, I was feeling myself. We had an A team and B team. I was the A team running back. Sophomore year, I played on reserves, and junior year, I played fullback because there was a guy older than me, Danyasha Tubble Yates, great football player, but he wrestled at Ohio State and was one of the top wrestlers in college. I didn't get to start at running back until I was a senior in high school. And 7 games into my senior year, I tear my ankle up pretty bad. I got hurt in the 7th game. I didn't play the second half and then for the next 3 weeks. I came back and had a good run in the playoffs. We were picked to win state, but lost in the semifinals. I wasn't highly recruited. My dad played football in Indiana. Him and a buddy put together a videotape of my best plays and sent it out to schools. I got offered at smaller schools like Illinois State, Kent State in Ohio, Tennessee State, where I ended up going. I had to get a little bit higher test scores, and I could have went to West Point. And so I chose to go to Tennessee State. I went down on a recruiting trip, and the other schools, for whatever reasons, they were either wanting me to play defense or fullback. I wasn't interested. I asked Tennessee State what they were recruiting me to play, and they told me, you're going to be a running back. I go down to Tennessee State, and I was expecting to redshirt because I didn't have my confidence yet. I thought I was good, but I didn't know yet. As I'm starting to practice and gain confidence, the coach pulls me aside after agreeing to redshirt me, and he said, Ryan, we're not going to redshirt you. I was mad at first. I was like, what? I said, man, I need this extra year to develop and all this. He said, you're ready. Midway through my freshman year, I take over the starting running back job at Tennessee State, have a pretty good year. And Tennessee State wanted me to stay. Growing up in the Midwest, I wanted to play in the Big Ten. Calvin Jones is a relative of mine from Steubenville, Ohio. Larry Jones, a running back, was Calvin's nephew. Larry got recruited in the early 80s. There's a picture of us somewhere with the 3 guys from Steubenville, Ohio, and also went to Iowa. Coach Vanderbilt looked at my tape out of high school. I had committed to Tennessee State. And Coach Vanderbilt, he was like, Ryan, I think that you're going to develop into a pretty good football player. And he was offering me a walk-on to Iowa. He said, I think you'll be here for about 2 years and earn a scholarship. He said, I really believe in your talents. He said, if anything doesn't work out at Tennessee State, call me because we would love to get you to Iowa. After my freshman year, I talked to my parents. They supported me wanting to walk on. It was Indiana and Iowa. I like Penn State, but Penn State and Indiana told me you could come if you want, but there was no interest. I called Coach Vanderbilt. I went out to Iowa in the spring. When I get there, Coach Vanderbilt has me meeting with academic advisors, and they're putting my schedule together to the point where I was telling Coach Vanderbilt, I got to talk to my parents. He said, we're going to make it work. He said, your grades are good. We're going to find you money to get you here. He got me a little bit of help I needed, but my parents stood by me. That's how I get to Iowa. I graduated in 1990. I came into school with Lloyd Bickham, Bobby Diaco, Scott Slusker. I went to camp with that class. I initially bonded more with those guys. That year, that team went to the Holiday Bowl, and I think they were 10-1, 11-1. The fact that I was transferring schools, I had to sit out. In those days, you couldn't transfer and play. And so I was going against Leroy Smith, Moses Santos. It was fun, but challenging. Leroy Smith and I ended up being really good friends. Initially, we went at it on the field because Leroy was talking, chirping, and trying to intimidate me, but at the same time, complimenting me as well. That was my journey and how I got to Iowa and I got interested in football.
You had a scholarship at Tennessee State, and then
I did
had to pay your own way to get to Iowa just to play
Yes.
Big Ten football. That's a huge leap and a big sacrifice, trusting that I can earn my way or get some money eventually.
A buddy of mine, we were talking about this a couple months ago. When you're younger, you think everything is going to work out. That kind of helped me. I have some great parents, and they supported that decision. I told them to give me a year. If nothing happens, I'll transfer back to Tennessee State or do whatever I have to do. My parents stood by me. Coach Vanderbilt told me I'd be at Iowa for about a year or two. So I was thinking, hopefully I can get it done in the first year. After a semester, I got offered a scholarship at Iowa. Coach Elliott comes up to me in the bubble while we're practicing, and he has like this serious, mean look on his face. He says, Coach Fry wants to see you in his office right now. My heart is pounding. I'm thinking to myself, I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm not in trouble. My grades are good. Coach Fry wants to see me. My heart's pounding. Whatever happens, it can't be true because I didn't do anything. I'm like, Coach, what do you think it could be? And he said, all I know is Coach Fry was pissed. He told me to get you and bring you up. I get to his office. I'm shaking. All the coaches are in there. Coach Triplett, Coach Gill, Verducci. Coach Fry looks up and says, Ryan Terry. I said, yes, sir. He says, we just wanted to bring you up here. All the coaches voted, and it was unanimous to put you on scholarship. I still get emotional talking about it. I'm here for a semester, right? And I'm going home on scholarship. I'm like, Coach Fry, for real? When you get back in January, you'll never have to pay for schooling again. I said, Coach, can I call my parents? He says, yes. Coach Fry calls my mom. He says, Mrs. Terry, this is Coach Hayden Fry. And she's like, hey, how you doing, Coach? She said, I have your son here, and he wants to tell you something. My mom, at first, she's a little bit worried. And I said, Mom, was Dad home? She said, yes. I said, well, can you both come to the phone? I said, you guys aren't going to believe this. I'm on scholarship. You can never have to pay for my schooling ever again. My mom bust out in a laugh type cry. It was great. Outside of kids being born, that was the best thing I've accomplished. And my parents don't have to pay for my schooling. I look back at Coach Elliott after that, and Coach Elliott was just cracking up laughing, but he got me good.
That's an incredible story. It had to be such a relief to know hard work is paying off. That's awesome.
Yeah. You never know if someone is watching you. I was offensive scout team player of the year. They had the big trophy and felt like I won the Heisman.
At that age, you realize those instances where someone says, hey, I think you've got this. It goes the other way too. If someone puts you down or does that. So I think that's an interesting thing to hear. You had this person that was like, yeah, you got this, not just set this thing in motion for you.
I left my hometown bitter. And I feel different about it now. I'm telling people, man, I'm going to play college football. I'm going to play Division I football. I'm going to go to the pros. In my hometown, it hadn't been seen in 20, 30 years. People's perception of what a professional player looks like is probably not me. But at the time, I'm thinking, how can you not see it? This size or speed? But they're looking at people on TV. Seeing these people on TV, and there are some big guys, but they're seeing these guys like, man, Ryan, you're not as big as him. And so when I left my hometown, except for a handful of people, my parents and a couple other people told me, like, man, you can do it. A lot of people were telling me I couldn't. But I look back on that, they weren't necessarily being negative. They just hadn't seen a professional football player. Joey Galloway graduated the same year and grew up 20 minutes from me in Bel Air, Ohio. I remember telling people back home that Joey Galloway is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. They're like, no, he's not. He's too small. I'm like, Joey Galloway is going to be a top 10, worst case 15 pick. And people are telling me he ain't even going to get drafted because he's too small. They don't know what that looked like. I had a few people along the way. Tennessee State head coach, Coach Gillum, he said, Ryan, I think you're going to be a first, second round pick as a running back. Maybe it would or would not have set up that way. My running back coach at Tennessee State was Rob Ryan. Rob and I got tight, and they sent Rob to talk to me too to try to get me to stay. But Rob, when he came to talk to me, and he was asking why I wanted to leave, and I told him about growing up in the Midwest and wanting to play in the Big Ten, he said, we're going to keep this between us. I'm taking a different coaching job as well. I'm going to be leaving here in a couple weeks myself. He says, I believe in you. If that's what you want to do, go for it. You're going to play professional football someday. On a college level, I think that helped me take that step to Iowa.
You had a stacked backfield when you got there. How do you navigate that with young kids like Tavian, Sedrick, and established guys? Talk us through kind of trying to get playing time in a competitive backfield.
My attitude at that point, as I'm starting to get more confident, I'm starting to believe in myself more. I was self-aware of my weaknesses. Coming out of high school, I didn't catch the ball well. I stayed after practice, running routes, catching balls off the jugs machine. It ended up becoming a strength for me. when you learn, the game slows down. People aren't a bust in NFL because of athletic ability. People are a bust because they can't pick it up top. At Tennessee State, it was a difficult system. I learned it relatively quick. I was the same way. I could see things happening on the field. I knew I was going to find my place. For example, we played at Purdue. There was a draw play that Tavian and I were in the game together in split backs. I was supposed to take the handoff, and Tavian was supposed to block the big linebacker that was probably big as you, Nick. I had a decision to make. When we cracked the huddle, I knew that linebacker was blitzing an A-gap. This is not a knock against Tavian. Tavian's a very young football player at this time. I didn't think Tavian was going to be able to block that linebacker. Myself taking the handoff may result in the guy breaking through Tavian and tackling me. So I told Tavian to switch with me and take the handoff. I cracked the linebacker. Tavian slid out behind me and took off for like a 40, 50-yard touchdown. I come to the sideline, and Coach Tripp starts to get on me. He was like, what are you doing? He said, that was supposed to be your carry. I said, Coach, wait till you see the film. The linebacker was in A-gap, and he was coming, and the kid was about 6'3", 240. And so I said, Coach, I don't feel like Tavian would have made that block. Tavian was a freshman at the time. I had a decision to make the block and let Tavian take the ball, or vice versa. Coach Tripp says, you are so unselfish as a football player, maybe too unselfish at times. But for me, I was the ultimate team player. At least the younger guys, I saw them as I could help them. Sedrick and Tavian, great athletes. I took a big brother role with those guys. I would be telling them things I saw, and I think they got to where they trust me, where they knew for me to play the same position. A lot of guys like, I'll let them mess up and I'll let them do whatever. But I was looking out for the greater good of the team as opposed to just what worked out for Ryan. I saw little things where I knew certain situations, the coaches were going to trust me, not necessarily for running the football, but for blitz pickup, catching the ball out of the backfield and being where I was supposed to be. From a work ethic standpoint, I wasn't going to let anybody outwork me. Other guys will probably tell you, man, I was running every other night. I was running 3 or 4 miles at night. And like I said, I stayed on the jugs machine catching the ball. I was working on weaknesses, trying to get a competitive edge. I wanted to see other guys get better as opposed to let him just mess up, and that gets me the job. I couldn't do that, man. I never been that type of guy.
Where do you think you get that work ethic from?
I hear stories about my dad. There's this one story. He was purposely running in heavy boots. It was pouring down rain. He's out there in combat boots and has a bushel of bananas, but he's passed out on the field. In my hometown, there's this little hill underneath this bridge. I remember watching Walter Payton running that hill with his kangaroos on. Running hills was a way to build up power and strength. There were people who could probably run faster than Walter Payton on the ground, but they couldn't beat Walter Payton up this hill. And I used to be challenging some of the fastest people or people that I knew to race me up this hill. I got that from Walter Payton. If I can beat everybody up this hill consistently, I was a sponge too. Anything my dad told me, my dad didn't force me to play football. He didn't want me to play because he didn't want me to live up to things he did. My junior year, I decided not to run track to get bigger, which was a huge mistake. My dad told me, if you're not going to run track, jump rope, run through ropes, get your feet quicker. And whenever somebody told me something, I did it. Ultimately, I'd have to give my dad credit just based off the stories that I heard of him being a lot like myself.
I have a funny Walter Payton story. I was with the Jets in camp, and we went to Chicago to play. Sitting in my locker, see this guy sneaking his head around the corner. He's trying to place who it was. So it turns out it's Walter Payton. I idolized the guy as a kid, and so I was, oh my God, this is amazing. And so the rest of the guys on the Jets team were harassing him about the shoes, the kangaroos, and all that stuff. I was just laughing, sitting there going, this is a really funny situation to be in. I had those shoes as a kid, and He's a wonderful, gracious guy. And these guys are just hounding him about it. And I was, this is a funny, special moment.
I never found the kangaroo cleats, but the first time I saw kangaroos, I was like, Dad, I need those. Had a little zipper pocket. I remember I put $1 in the pocket of the kangaroos.
Instead, you got the ponies.
Exactly. I got the ponies and the Reebok
pumps.
Yeah.
Almost as good as the Ruse.
Funny story about the shoes at Iowa. I had never been in a place where you could ask for another pair of shoes. In high school, you got your one pair of shoes. At Tennessee State, we had our one pair of shoes. I think Greg came up to me one day after practice with some new shoes. He was like, Ryan, there are new cleats. I said, thank you. I says, man, I really appreciate that. He says, Ryan, you can get a new pair of shoes if you need them. I was like, for real? I can get another pair. He said, yeah. You've been the only guy that hasn't asked for a new pair of cleats. He said, let me come take a look at his shoes because his shoes got to be all out of shape. And they were. I thought that's the way it worked.
You might be the only person who actually they gave you voluntarily equipment. Usually everyone was saying they're getting denied or turned down for more equipment.
I was a walk-on. So he came to me with a new pair of shoes. I thought, this is like a Christmas present. Outstanding. Yep.
That's great. So was Leroy Smith, he looked like a football player, a tough guy. I maybe met him once or twice.
He chirped a lot, trying to get into your head. Initially, you don't know him. He seems like talking to me. I kept telling him, I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep coming. It went from him chirping at me to making a couple moves on him and breaking his ankles. Then I'm starting to chirp back at him. But I would say ultimately he was fun. I look forward to practicing against Leroy because he was going to talk smack. We both had our share of talking back to each other, but it was fun. He also gave me one of the ultimate compliments. He said I made him better on the field. Coming from him and what he had accomplished at Iowa, I said, that's love right, man. Yeah.
Yeah, he had an unbelievable season. I think he was All-American, wasn't he?
Yeah, he led the nation in sacks. He was the real deal.
How long were you at Iowa until you felt like the game slowed down and you got to the point where, okay, I can do this. I can really succeed at this. How long did that take?
You know what? So Tennessee State was my true freshman year. I redshirted the year I was sitting out and running scout team. I remember the spring, I was still finding my way and struggling with the offense a little bit because Iowa's offense is not an easy offense to learn. And so I remember having my little issues in the spring, but I think when I stuck around in the summer, my redshirt sophomore year at Iowa, I remember going to the kickoff classic against NC State. I remember playing against Miami. Miami was one of those teams, they're a lot smaller than what I was expecting. You think about Miami, you're thinking of coming to see these great big teams, but they were small. But I would say midway through that game, the game started to slow down for me. By the time we got to Iowa State and then on into Colorado, I started to say to myself, yeah, man, I can do this. I was talking to Rashard Carter. His son is going to be a pretty good athlete. He was asking Lloyd and I for advice as fathers. I said, let other people train your son as far as like footwork and all those things. What you do, Rashard, teach him situational football. Teach him about down distance coverages, cover 2, cover 3, man free. I said, if you start teaching him those things now, the game is going to slow down for him a lot faster. What tends to happen is you have great athletes that are used to dominating because they're great athletes. But as they get older, like in the college and pros, they start playing against better athletes on the field. Then the game gets harder. If your kid knows how to sit down in the zone and a man, he has to keep running. When that guy goes in motion, the guy goes with him. He knows that's man. So that's telling him what to do. Knowing it's third down and long. And if you're on offense, here's going to be the series of plays that you're going to run. If you're on defense, they have to make 9 yards, 13 yards. Those are the things that slow the game down. To get the situational part of the game, that's what slows the game down for you.
Gotcha. I was just thinking about that Miami game. I was in the north end zone. One of their stars came down and literally spits on the Tiger Hawk. Everybody went nuts. That was the start of my Hawkeye pride. This is our place. That's disrespectful.
If you've been around the block, they're trying to get into your head any way they can. And those Miami teams were definitely trying to do that. No question about it. Yeah.
Lamar Thomas was one of their receivers. I went to camp with the Dolphins, and him and one of the other guys got in this like almost fight about who was faster at the 40. They ended up jawing back and forth. So this whole kind of off-season OTA program like day, and they decided they were going to do a foot race for each other's cars. They go to start, and there's 4 or 5 false starts. They were just like messing with each other. Yeah. This like whole circus they were playing. And finally they ran the race, and Lamar won. And then he got the car, so he's driving it around. And then the other guy, Jackson, shuts it down. Super entertaining that day.
Just the competitive nature, trying to get in another guy's head, and to the point where you believe that I'm faster than you so much that I'll race you for your car. That's a heck of a belief.
Definitely believing in yourself. One guy was older. It's like, oh, no, I got this. The young guy's like, like youngster's going to come and show you what's happening. Entertaining, to say the least.
You said your family was tied in with Calvin Jones. Had you heard about the Steubenville Trio in Iowa? Have you heard any of that story growing up?
The trio, Calvin Jones, Eddie Vincent, and Frank Gillum, who also would be a distant cousin of mine as well.
Oh, wow.
But I'll tell you, my connection to Iowa, my uncle, my mom's brother, got recruited by every school. And it is believed that in Bo Schembechler's book, talking about a wide receiver out of Ohio being one of the best, he's talking about my uncle, Robert Washington. So trying to recruit my uncle in Iowa gave my mom a scholarship. My mom started at school at Iowa, but got homesick and came home after a year. My mom, having gone to Iowa, was my first kind of tie to where I considered it. My mom really liked it. I just was homesick. And I think maybe had my uncle come out there to school where she was with her brother, it would have been different. But that was my first tie to Iowa, talking to my mom about Iowa. My mom didn't play athletics at Iowa, but played softball in high school. I don't have any real records of it, but people tell me my mom was a pretty good athlete in her own right. Yeah. From my mother's side, they're Jeters and Gillums. Anthony Dorsett, our grandmothers are sisters. Our moms are first cousins. We're second cousins. Ty Law is a cousin as well. If you hear about a Jeter or Gillum coming out of Western Pennsylvania, East Ohio, that's my family. Yeah.
That's our second Ty Law reference. Demo said he caught his first pass off Ty Law.
On Ty Law? Ty's father is a Jeter. The Laws and Dorsetts are related. Anthony and Ty, they're cousins on both sides.
Your family picnics must have been amazing. Right, playing sports?
People will talk about the bloodlines. I don't think I got the overwhelming athletic genes, or maybe I was just later developing. It did carry me to be the first fastest man in Iowa, huh? Remember the first race we had, the fastest man? I mean, if you guys remember that.
I was there in 92, Nick starting 93.
Race would have been the spring of 94. It was myself, Shane Day, Richard, Sedrick, Tavian, Tim. That race, I beat all those guys. So maybe I did have the gene hiding in me, because that's a pretty good group of guys.
It's a fast squad for sure. Refresh my memory.
They made it competitive, offense against defense. There was the bench press, the 300 shuttle, and all those things. We closed it out with the fastest man race. I won among the skill positions, and Bill Innes for the lineman, linebacker, tight end race.
Gotcha. I remember now. It was tight end off-season workouts and field races and all that stuff. Yeah, got it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just for reference, a cross field was down and back, right?
Tell us a little more about games you remember. You graduated after the 94 season. So we didn't end up going to a bowl that year. That's disappointing. But and then maybe lead into pro day and stuff like that afterwards.
If you ever get Dana Hughes on this podcast, tell Dana Hughes to say, hey, I talked to Ryan Terry and he said he hates you. All right. So here's how this story goes. So Dana and I, we got a running joke, and it's so funny because sometimes on social media, either his friends or mine, Dana will say he hates me because of something. I've had people attacking him. I'm like, no, we're just joking. So 1992, my sophomore year, and that's Dana's senior year. I'm having a great game against Iowa State, but I fumbled twice. First time, Iowa State recovers. I take a pitch around the right side and looks like I was going to take it all the way, and I got stripped. And I run the ball like later in the game, and I fumble, and Dana ends up actually jumping on the ball. Dana comes back to the huddle and cusses me out. He gave me the business about fumbling. All I could think about in that moment was looking at Dana and was, man, I hate you. I hate your guts. I told Dana that story later. If you see something on social media, whatever, Dana, he'll say he hates me. We have this running joke where we hate each other. It's one of those moments where I was mad, he was right. All I could think about was, I just hate your guts right now. When my birthday came up, everybody was telling me happy birthday in the group text. And Dana was like, I hate this day more than any day of my life. Dana was screaming at me, but looking back, it was so funny. I remember Corbin Smith playing quarterback. We were playing against Illinois when they had Simeon Rice, Kevin Hardy. They were just loaded. First rounders coming off the edge. And I'm sure you guys have seen the Friday movie once before in your life. And I don't know if you remember when Ezel slips in the grocery store and is trying to get money. And the dude tells him, like, man, get your punk ass up. It ain't even wet over there. Corbin gets sacked. I'm walking by him and he's in pain. I said, man, get your punk ass up. It ain't even wet over there. Corbin always reminds me of that. My senior year at Iowa was difficult because the Penn State game, I tore my ankle. I never made it back that season in one piece. The defining moment was a great moment in a Northwestern game when I took a pitch to the left and ran 73 yards for a touchdown. That was a great ending for me. That year, we weren't going to a bowl game. Coach Fry had made the decision to move on with the younger guys, which you never understand when you're younger. But now I totally understand. He's getting the guys ready for next year. For me to have my last home game and that happened and close out. If you look at the film, the first guy that greets me is Sedrick Shaw. Sedrick and I had a really good relationship, man. For guys to play the same position, it would have been easy for guys to pit us against each other. But Sedrick comes running out to the field to greet me. That was a great ending towards Iowa. When I was coming out, there wasn't a true pro day at Iowa. I remember running 40s and working out for teams. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was a scout for the Jets. He showed me my 40 times, and the person that he compared my 40 times to was Napoleon Kaufman, the running back from Washington. And Napoleon, he's a shorter guy, and I'm probably more of a long strider. I thought he would be a lot faster than me. My times were mid 4.4s to the low 4.5, and the scout was talking to me. He was like, man, you're a lot bigger and faster than I expected. You're very comparable to Napoleon Kaufman. I found that odd because I thought, wow, he's so much faster than me. The guy was just telling me that you guys run differently. I don't know what's going to happen once the pros come, but working hard does pay off. I'll take you back to Tennessee State. Rob Ryan was my running back coach. Fast forward to the night of the draft. I get a call from Rob Ryan. And Rob Ryan would always tell me when I was at Tennessee State, come on, Ryan Terry, hit it up in there. We became good friends, a good coach-player relationship. When Rob spoke to me that night, he said, projection-wise, it looked like you can go as early as the 4th or as late as the 6th round. He says, if you get drafted, we're going to stay in touch and see what happens. if you don't get drafted, I'm going to get back in touch with you. I'd like you to come out to Arizona. He said, I've already told the old man talking about his father, Buddy Ryan, about me. He said, we really like to have you. So the draft comes and goes, and I don't hear from anybody. Then I get calls from the Cleveland Browns, Kansas City Chiefs, and San Diego Chargers, all offer me money to come to camp. Sure enough, I end up getting a call from the Cardinals. Now, that's one thing I love about Rob Ryan. I could totally trust his word. Because initially, I didn't know if I was going to hear back from him. Then I get a call from Rob, and he was like, yeah, we'd love to have you. I get on the phone with the offensive coordinator. I can't remember Dave's last name. This is funny because I'm nobody. I didn't get drafted. It wasn't like I'm a first, second round pick. So I get on the phone with the offensive coordinator and I start telling him about the teams, the money they're offering me. I said, what are the Cardinals prepared to do? He says, we're not prepared to do shit. We're prepared to give you a legitimate chance to make this team. Let me get you back on the phone with Rob. I get back on the phone with Rob, the teams. He says, Cleveland has Lorenzo White, Leroy Hurd, and some other back. He was like, they're going to use you for a tackling dummy in camp. The Chiefs, Marcus Allen drafted Greg Hill out of Texas A&M in the first round year before. But he told me, you're going to be a tackling dummy, and they're going to send you home. We went over to talk about the San Diego Chargers. He said they got Natron Means, Mario Bennett, drafted Terrell Fletcher in the second round. You're going to be a tackling dummy, and they're going to send you home. The Cardinals tried to get both Kent Call and I to come to Arizona. They love Kent too. But I think Kent took the money in San Diego and went to San Diego. But they wanted Kent pretty bad too. And so after Rob Ryan says, you're like a son to me. You're one of my favorite players that I've ever had the pleasure of coaching. He said, I love you, man. I put my name and my reputation online to get you out here to Arizona. He says, we're not going to give you any money to come to camp, but a legitimate chance to make this team. They had drafted Garrison Hurst the year before, and the other running back, I can't think of his name, but they ended up trading him to the Rams. He said, I wouldn't lie to you. I think you'll make the team. He said, I can't promise you anything. This is the last thing I'm going to say. I'm going to give the phone back to Dave. But Ryan, if you're not on that plane next week, flying in Arizona, he said, don't talk to me ever again. And so he gave the phone back to Dave, and Dave said, what do you want to do? I guess I'll see you guys in Arizona next week. That's part of how I ended up in Arizona. I had a really good mini camp. I remember them bringing a couple running backs. Now I'm going to camp in the summertime. So it was funny. When I walked in, there was 5 running backs in camp, right? I looked at the depth chart. I was number 5. When I first looked at that depth chart, it says, man, I said, they got me. I'm going to be a tackling dummy. And I could have had $30,000 or $40,000 in my pocket ready to go out in life. And I said, geez. But then it was just the switch that says, hey, man, let's go out here and make something happen. Through the first week, I'm having a good camp, but I'm number 5. So in the middle of next week, guys, 1 through 4 gets hurt. So Garrison Hurst, Mark Higgs, I'm trying to think of the other 2 guys. They all get hurt. So for 2.5 weeks, I'm running with the ones the whole time. So I end up leading the preseason and rushing and just having a great camp. And I was in great shape running with the number 1 offense, also jumping in on the scout team. They were bringing backs in a couple days and shipping them out. I don't know if this reporter retired, but her name was Mia Hammond. She was a reporter, a writer in Arizona. She was the first one to tell me, Ryan, you ain't going nowhere. Really, she said, I know. You're going to hear in the media about the media asking about you and all this, and are you going to make the team? But you've made this team. She said, you're going to make this team. I started to hear other reporters say, man, you had an outstanding camp. You're making this team. I ended up making the team. And it was a great experience. from my perception of the NFL, it was the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me. It was the best because, like college, it's the locker room, the guys you meet. I haven't seen you guys for years, but talking to you, it's like we're back in college. Nobody can take the locker room away from the guys that I got to meet, the places I got to travel, meeting presidents, owners of companies, all the way down to homeless and everybody in between. You get such a diverse experience of life. I wouldn't trade for the world. Being a young man from Steubenville, Ohio, and having a chance to join a fraternity that 1.3% of guys ever get to make. I get to say I'm a part of that fraternity. Some of the best things that ever happened to me. I wish I understood that the pro game, it's a business. It's truly a business. When a team is done with you, they're done to tell this team about you. You need help with your resume. A week outside that building, I couldn't get in touch with anybody, couldn't get any help, no references, no help on the resume, none of those things. Hopefully those things have gotten better. I'm not bitter. It's just making someone aware it's a business. The faster you understand it's a business, the chances are you don't get your feelings hurt. You look at it as business. It's different than high school and college. You have to be looking out for your best interests and when you might need to sign with another team or align different people. That would be the downside to the professional game.
So after Arizona, did you try to get on with other teams?
I tried, nothing stuck. There was an assistant GM in Arizona who actually ended up going to the Edmonton Eskimos. He called me to go up there to play in Edmonton. I was in Edmonton in 1998. I was in Toronto in 99 and 2000. I went back out to Edmonton in 2001, finished up in Montreal in 2002. And for me, I always tell people Canada was a great experience. I had a lot more fun with the game in Canada. It's really good for an offensive player. I had loads of fun playing up there. Obviously, you're not making the same kind of money that you are in NFL. If I was still in NFL, someone would have had to drag me off the field because of the financial gain. Things coming to an end for me. I had a couple buddies, one being Cliff King and another buddy of mine from high school, Sheldon Carney. They were working for the same pharmaceutical company, and they met at a meeting and they were talking. One of my best friends growing up played football at Iowa. Where are you from? Steubenville, Ohio. And they both say almost at the same time, Ryan Terry. They called me from that meeting. They came to Canada to visit me. I got some background of them working in pharmaceutical sales. I went to visit Cliff and Shelton. After the 2000 season, I said, I'm ready to hop into pharmaceutical sales. This gives me a chance to talk to people, move around, not be at a desk. They told me, Ryan, a job like this will be waiting for you. Just go ahead and enjoy football. So I ended up playing for 2 more years, but I knew that the 2002 season was going to be my last year playing. I had a great camp. Lawrence Phillips was in camp with me, running back from Nebraska, and Mike Pringle, who was the CFL's all-time leading rusher. And Lawrence Phillips, exceptional athlete, but I had a better camp than both of those guys. Montreal asked me to take a huge pay cut. I wasn't willing, so they cut me. BC, British Columbia, wanted to sign me. I was heading to the airport to fly to BC, and Montreal intercepted because they were having issues with Lawrence. Mike Pringle blew his knee out. They begged me and says, no, please come back to Montreal. And so I got swayed to come back, and it was a good time. But for me, I was done. And in my mind, I don't want to be 35 years old, have no identity, have no work experience, and not really knowing what to do. And football doesn't want me anymore. And I probably could have played for 2 more years. Teams from Canada called me. I told them I moved on and I was done. I took the step back to move forward away from football. It was perfect timing.
I recall when you were at the Cardinals, you had a good return season, didn't you?
Yes. My first year with the Arizona Cardinals, through the first 10 games, I led the NFL in kickoff returns. I had a conversation with Coach Buddy Ryan. We brought you in the back of Garrison Hurst. You've exceeded our expectations of moving into next year. He said, we're going to give you a chance to fight for the starting running back job with Garrison Hurst. If you beat Garrison out, we're going to go with you and move on from Garrison. A lot of money tied up with Garrison. He said, if Garrison beats you out, you'll back him up and return kicks. Through those last 6 games, they slowed me down on returning kicks through 10 games. If I continue that on, I'm probably going to the Pro Bowl as a kick returner my first year. So they stopped me from returning kicks to make sure that I was not going to the Pro Bowl as a kick returner. It would give me a lot of leverage in negotiating a contract the next year. But I understood that part of the business of football. Yeah.
That's not cool. Well, who's the best athlete in the NFL that you played against?
Man, it's unequivocally Junior Seau. Size, speed, intelligence. Junior Seau was 6'4", 250, fast. But even forget about all of that. We scrimmaged San Diego every year. He knew every play, telling guys, get right there. And that ain't even a defense. Look, they're going to run the ball right there. Junior Seau knew everything on that field. You talk about the linemen, how they're sitting. Junior Seau to me was it. Of course, Deion Sanders was electric and whatnot, and to see him play. But to me, maybe being a running back, Junior Seau affected the game so much. And he just wrecked it, man. I'm talking about Junior Seau was just, man. And then you get into his size and speed and athletic ability. Junior Seau to me was hands down the best football player, athlete that I've ever seen.
Do you have any funny camp NFL stories that are entertaining?
In Arizona, we were always fighting. I like to think of myself as a very clean player. There was a linebacker, Wesley Lee from Mississippi State, and he's probably 6'3", 255, and just built incredibly. I remember the coach saying to me, you want to make this team? I said, absolutely. He says, next play, I want you to cut Wesley Lee. I cut it. I want to make the team. But it's outside of my character to cut your own player in a drill, but it was setting you up to fight and seeing what you would or would not do. I guess testing to see, will he go beyond what's called for? And I just remember that. Sure enough, I cut him, and here comes Wesley Lee at me. It was such a melee, which probably helped me out because I was totally outmatched as far as size and strength, and with the fact that everybody starts fighting offense, defense. That was constant behavior in our camps in Arizona. Mike Devlin played with me on the Cardinals. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's against you, you probably hate his guts. And Devlin, like this, the same situation. You guys remember Eric Swan, right? The big defensive tackle, like 6'6", 6'7", man, like 315. And I'm talking about just like his abs look like big gold bars, a freak of nature. He was a really nice guy too. There's times where the defense is confusing us and the tackle slides out or the guard ends up taking a linebacker when I got to step up and block Eric Swan. And Eric Swan just could totally run me over, and he just stops and picks me up and laughs, whatever like that. Just a really good guy. So Devlin cuts Eric Swan in practice. And Eric Swan tells Devlin, look, man, don't cut me again. If you cut me, we're going to have some problems. And Devlin said, do what you got to do, you know. Devlin cuts him on the next play. And he hit Devlin with an uppercut. I respect Devlin because he wasn't afraid of nobody. Devlin was doing what he needed to do. Part of me was like, I respect Devlin. Another part was like, he picked the wrong dude to cut on the next play. And I never seen Eric Swan go off like that. Thank God for a bunch of people being there. I love Devlin, but I don't know if he would have survived that one. After they broke it up, Devlin was like ready to do it again. I was like, this dude is insane, crazy. But love the guy. It was great having another Hawkeye onto the team. It was comforting.
Kickers may be a weird breed, but linemen are their own breed as well.
They are, for sure.
For people that wouldn't understand, describe a cut block.
Cut block is running in at another guy's knees, and you take a guy off his feet. You hope a guy's leg is not planted. You can blow a guy's knee out. In a live game, you're trying to get their hands down to give the quarterback a clear passing lane. But yeah, we practiced cutting at Iowa, and I've cut at Iowa in a game. Never my own teammate in practice, but I did what I had to do in Arizona.
It'll slow down a defensive guy, makes him think about it too. Again, like it's a maneuver to gain an edge.
Aim at their mid thigh and up at their knee. If you go at the knee too fast and a guy recognizes it, end up going too low, a guy can jump over you or push you down. You're running through a guy's lower mid thigh with the hopes of getting him off his feet so he can't have his hands up to affect the passing lane. They outlawed it outside of the tackle box. For example, if a quarterback was rolling out and I'm leading the way when I go and cut, or the lineman is rolling out and they go and cut someone, they've outlawed it outside of the tackle box. Yep. So if a linebacker was running straight up the gut, I can cut him if I wanted to. Yep.
You see the running backs, there might be an open hole. Can you describe what that's like from your perspective, getting the ball and what happens around you? Can you see the play opening up and you're like, oh, wow, that's a huge lane I'm running here? Or you're like, oh, I know that I need to slow down and wait for this to happen. And can you walk through some of that for us?
First, let's go into the mentality of a running back. There's no prototypical size. Derrick Henry is on the far end of being a big guy. It's 6'4", probably 260. The other running back for the Ravens is probably 5'7", 5'8", and maybe 175, 80 pounds. So if a running back is scared to get hit, they're not going to make a good running back. You cannot be afraid to be hit as a running back, but there's going to come a time where you're going to get hit. Running back, it's a combination of instinct, gut feeling, patience, and knowing when to burst. It's like you centrifuge that all up, because there's been times in my career and you go to hit it and it looks like that hole is wide open, and then somebody gets blocked over to the hole. You have to a different direction. There's also, being a running back, you can affect the play. For example, taking a stretch play to the left, and I to start off really fast because I'm wanting the defense to over pursue, to give me a lane to then straighten up. And then there's plays where you got to have patience and you have to let the play develop and trust it. There are a lot of different running backs with different styles. I was more of a slasher. I did a good job of cutting and setting things up. If you asked a running back who were their favorite running backs growing up, you probably will get some of that in their style. The two running backs that influenced me or my style the most were Eric Dickerson and Roger Craig. Not that I run exactly like Eric Dickerson, but I run very smooth and deceptive. People that have played against me have told me I was a lot faster than what they saw on film, because Danon played for the Chiefs and I played for the Cardinals and running kickoff returns. And Danon even said, man, he was like, dude, you were a little faster than I thought. I think there's parts of me that you'll see some Eric Dickerson. And also, too, I like Roger Craig because he had a lot of leg drive. He pumped his legs and kept his knees up. He didn't have as much wiggle and cuts as Eric Dickerson. At the time I was coming up through high school and college, those are the two guys that I sort of patterned some of my running style off of. Nick, to answer your question, it takes a little bit of everything, certain to develop. And so you have to have patience waiting for the play to develop. Sometimes you can affect those plays more. And sometimes that hole is there and you better be ready to hit it, because if you hesitate for a second, the hole's closed, and what could have been a huge run turns out to be not so much. Yep.
Gotcha. You're just looking to create daylight, basically. Got it.
I always wanted to get to daylight. Contact meant slowing me down. I was looking to hit daylight, to move. So as I'm getting past you, I'm looking up the field to the next guy.
Do you have any good Hayden Fry stories?
One of the funniest things to me, I always cracked up the way Coach Fry negotiated our time. He would always say, we're in this time zone. He would compare it to getting extra sleep or losing sleep. And because of that, we're going to have you guys come in early. I remember he talked how dangerous San Antonio was. He was like, you got to watch out because they'll get you in the back alley. We're not going to let that happen. Back at the hotel by 9. And we knew the other team was getting to stay out a lot later and do other things. Just tell us we ain't going anywhere after 9. As great as my sophomore year running the ball, I had some fumbles. And I remember against Purdue, I come off to the sideline after a fumble, and Coach Fry says to me, Ryan Terry, are you trying to throw this game? I was crushed. But looking back, I love Coach Fry. He had to sign off on me coming to Iowa. When I first got there, I remember going to meet Coach Fry, and he was like, you sure you want to play football? And I was like, yes, sir. And he was like, because you look like a model. I said, I definitely want to play football. He was joking. I'm thinking, what is he talking about? Looking back on Coach Fry, I felt like he gave guys opportunities. I remember the end of the year banquet, Coach Fry stood up, and I just never forget Coach Fry saying, hey, these guys have contributed to millions of dollars coming into this university, and I want my guys hired. I'll never forget, had it not been for professional football, I had a job leaving college. Coach Fry was really good. If you played for him, did what you were supposed to do, you went to class, you were pretty much a good guy. I feel like Coach Fry did his part helping guys further their career. Ultimately, I saw Coach Fry as a good man, and you check some of the stories. I know the stories about the guy coming into SMU and the first African-American player and things like that. In a lot of ways, he was before his time. It's not to knock the current coaching staff. He was talking to me, but ultimately I feel like Coach Fry, he's the CEO of the ship, and I think that he treated his guys fairly. Nobody gets everything 100% right. I think his intentions were right. And even with myself, my senior year, when I come back off of injury and I'm expecting to play more, now as a 53-year-old, I also may have made that decision as well. We're not going to a bowl game, and to start working on getting the younger guys ready and making the team better for next year, which resulted in the next year, you went into the bowl game against Washington and smacked them. And I think that everybody saw Washington as the clear-cut favorite. So looking back on it, it made all the sense in the world what he did. I have the utmost respect for him.
You jogged my memory about his schedule. We got today, this afternoon, tonight, tomorrow morning. You made it seem like you had 3 days off, and you're like, we got to come into practice at 10 o'clock the next morning. It's funny, you just jogged my memory.
He'd be selling you on the schedule like it's a good thing, getting you extra sleep. I get it. He's running a tight ship. He's going to make sure nobody is out getting in trouble. But I would be cracking up hearing him make it sound so much better. You have to practice, eat, say hello to our mom and dad, and go to your room. That was pretty funny.
That's got to be stressful, knowing all the people that we went to school with, to be in charge of them and just be like, having to be 18 to 22 years old and be like, okay, we're taking you someplace. We have to make sure everyone is home, safe.
There are times I wish I got into coaching. I think I would make a great coach. I love football. You have to manage different personalities, backgrounds. In a football locker room, You get such diversity, small towns, big cities, rich, poor, black, white, liberal, conservative. In a football locker room, people get heard and understood faster. I know just coming into Iowa, I remember a player coming to Iowa and literally having the clothes he had on and another set in a Kroger's bag. I can think of a player that come to school in a 740 BMW and had it all, right? And we got everybody in between those two. I remember talking to some gentlemen who were saying players only paid should be their scholarship and they shouldn't get any more. And I just, being myself, didn't scream, didn't holler. I just said, sir, give me 5 minutes. I want to give you a different perspective. It may or may not change your mind, but I want to give you a different perspective. And I said, there's a guy that came to school with the clothes he had on and a Kroger's bag. He's coming from Texas to Iowa, a colder climate. He doesn't have a winter coat, hat, gloves, boots, or anything like that to equip him for the winter. The school is not allowed to pay for him to get home for a funeral, to get home for vacation breaks. The school is not allowed to pay for any of that. When we go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, this guy has no money to get food outside of whatever's being offered with a scholarship. He doesn't have clothes to go out and enjoy himself. But the school can sell his jersey in the bookstore or make money beyond his scholarship. They're making thousands, millions. What advice do you have to help that kid? If somebody in his family dies, he can't get home without the guys chipping in to send him home. This guy is wearing his football stuff that is issued to him because that's all he has as far as sweats and a jacket. Even if he meets a girl, he can't take her out on a date. He can't take her on a date to make McDonald's. I said, what would be your advice? Or how would you help this kid? The guy told me, you may have changed my mind. I never thought about it that way. I just want to give you a different, perspective. We can argue over how much a kid should get, but to say that a kid can't get anything, and instead of staying close to home where he could help, he can't work either. On scholarship, you can't work. What do we do? Everybody assumes that everybody's okay coming to school and have the things that they need, but the kid can't get a haircut. If the team doesn't cut his hair, he can't pay to get a haircut. I bring all that back to say that in a football locker room, especially a college locker room, you see that. You also see the kid like in a 740 BMW on the first day. You get everybody in between, different races, beliefs, cultures, big city, small city. You centrifuge all that into a football team. Early on in my life, I'd never been out to a super big city either. So in a football locker room, it's like throwing everybody in that room and saying, we got to work out whatever differences. We got to listen to each other. We got to respect each other. The football room is where so many isms of life get broken down. Even if we don't agree, we get a perspective and we understand from a different perspective. So it's one thing that I will always love and cherish about a locker room. High school is tight-knit. Everybody's coming from the same environment, upbringing. But in college, you get that different centrifuge. I love that and appreciate it.
Your sports teams are a model for how to do that. You get people aligned to a common goal, see everyone work hard. It breaks down barriers. You get exposure to different situations and cultures, and it works. People don't always get along, but there's a respect. We have this brotherhood that can't break. That's something you never forget. We pick up where we left off. It was ingrained, hanging out and doing all this stuff together.
Absolutely. When you went to battle with people and you can trust this person, it's special for sure.
think those road games really is where it really gets cemented too, because you're a small group, you're going in a hostile environment, some really hostile places we played. You band together with your fans. That's where you become a strong team.
You know what, Brian, I would agree with you on that. I was making a comparison, and obviously we're not Green Beret, so I'm not trying to say I was my dad out in Vietnam. But my dad told me when war is being talked about, the Green Beret, they're already behind enemy lines. It's about this small group in a hostile environment. We have to trust and be with each other. At home, 80,000 people love us and all that. But when you go on the road and it's however many guys you got and the trainers and the coaches, and it's like we're this small group in this environment that is definitely not stacked for us. And so you get to bond with guys, and we got each other's back, man. Whatever differences we have or whatever like that, man, we got to put that aside and go out here and work together. It's special.
I think that was one of the favorite things about the road games for me is after the game, we would find the Iowa section and connect with them. It was a shared bond. It was a great feeling to be like, wow, we just went through this and they made the effort to get there with us.
Yeah.
Great. So you were talking about coaching. Why don't you tell us what you're up to now?
Yeah. Now, I own a stretch therapy company. To make a long story short, the assisted stretch therapy that I do, I fell in love with stretching. My first trainer as a professional athlete was Mac Newton. His background is martial arts, and he was a strength and conditioning coach for the Dallas Cowboys, Oakland A's, and St. Louis Cardinals. My first encounter with him as a pro, our first hour was stretching, and then we worked out, and he gave us a little, motivational talk. He was the first to make me understand the importance of stretching. The website, www. So my initials RTOF stretch. It looks like RT of stretch, but I pronounce it art of stretch. Just a play on words. My name says art, so art of stretch. I tell people the only selfish thing I've done is play football, right? Football was the first thing where you carve out time for yourself for training to be better. I've always looked at myself as a person who I enjoy helping other people. Every other thing I've chosen to do, guys call me for prepping them for an interview, giving people advice on training and stretching. I love to make people feel better, move better, and function better. There are a number of different clients I work with. At first, people think I only work with athletes. Athletes is one portion of it. I work with a lot of senior citizens, 80 and 90-year-olds. I work with pregnant women, youth athletes, people with back pain, neurological conditions. It continues to expand. I really love what I do because it helps people feel better. If you guys are ever in the Houston area, I'd love to take you to a session so you can better understand what it is and how you feel after. I'm launching a certification course because I realize that if I want to spread the gospel, I can't stretch everybody. I have a couple therapists that work for me, but I really see that the certification is teaching people, which I feel is a gift that I have. I want to introduce this to other people, not only Houston, but throughout the United States, and hopefully it expands other places as well. I want it to be high quality. 11 years ago, when I started, people told me, Ryan, that's crazy. Nobody's going to pay you to stretch, and that, it doesn't make sense and all that. And I was telling people, I said, professional athletes and dancers are already having it done. The public just needs educated on it. Once the public starts to get educated on the importance of stretching, you'll see an uptake. And I'm starting to see that now. But I know people thought I was crazy in the beginning, but now I have people telling me the same thing. Like when I was telling them about, I want to play football someday. And I got people telling me, man, I remember you were at this 11 years ago. It's going to happen. I've met so many amazing people. I never thought I would like something more than football. I love how I make people feel, how I connect with people. It's almost like a therapy set. How many people share things with me? A lot of the senior citizens that I work with, if we're lucky, we're all going to get old someday. And they don't exactly always have people coming to visit them when people talking to them. And so I love them. They're always on time. I've learned fascinating stories. They're not only on time. I got a 93-year-old every Wednesday. She's 15 minutes early and she got a coffee and some type of muffin or something for me every Wednesday morning. I love it. But I get to hear about places that they traveled, things that they've done. And it's like a true therapy session, even beyond getting stretched by me. I love it. Right now, the certification is in Houston. I'm going to start to expand out next year. For example, I'm gearing up to have a certification training in Columbus, Ohio. It's in person. It's a 4-day certification. A person's going to come work with me Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they're going to go home Monday knowing what to do. If we're in person and I'm showing you and teaching you how to feel certain things and get in tune with a person's nervous system so that you can make it more pleasurable for them as well as yourself, to me, it needs to be hands-on. I'd rather work with someone hands-on and know they know what they're doing and feel comfortable because they've worked with myself and my training staff. To all the Iowa guys, my original social media page got hacked and hijacked. I don't have control over that page. I've tried to reach out to Facebook, and the crypto people have hijacked that page. It's going to take me a while to build back up just my personal audience. As far as social media goes, on Facebook, it reads RTOF Stretch. And on Instagram, it is RTOF Stretch Official. If anybody wants to look at social media, my personal page for the Iowa guys, I started a new page because it doesn't look like I'm going to get the other page back.
I heard you're a pretty good barber. Team barber. You took some of Nick's clients at the Slater dorm.
I couldn't cross over. That was only a certain segment. I wasn't trusted.
It's funny. I was a pretty good artist. I could draw and sketch. My mom was a beautician. Growing up, we had a shop built off the house. I was my mom's like main runner to hair supply store to get all type of perms and neutralizers. I would watch my mom and study what she did. And then I got my best friend start letting me cut his hair. And then when I started cutting his hair, other guys were saying to him, Jay, who cut your hair? And Ryan cut my hair. In high school, I was charging $3 a haircut. And I'm getting lines of people. I might have cut Lloyd's hair first, show Lloyd how to cut his own hair. And I started cutting Bo and Harold. And I guess other guys start seeing me cut other guys' hair. And it got crazy. It expanded past the football. Looking back, I was probably breaking NCAA rules, making money, cutting hair. I'd have 4 to 6 heads a night. My senior year, I pulled back because when we would go to the hotel on Friday night, man, I was getting bombarded. I'm standing on my legs when we got a game tomorrow, cutting everybody's hair. Had to pull back. It was great. My parents would be calling me and telling me, hey, we just sent you $200 or $300 through Western Union. I'd be like, Dad, I don't need any money. And my dad would be like, what do you mean you don't need any money? He was like, I haven't sent you money in 2 weeks. I'd be like, Dad, I got $1,000. He said, how you got $1,000? I said, I cut a lot of guys hair on it. I said, I got people across campus. I said, man, Dad, I'm good. I already sent it, son. Go ahead and get it and enjoy it. I had a nice haircutting business. In today's world, I could have set up shop, and gave myself an NIL deal,
That's right.
Yeah, you could have. I wasn't smart enough to charge. I had like 5 or 6 a night in the dorms, and I didn't charge anything.
High school, I was charging $3, but I was charging $5 a haircut, man. I was like 4 to 6 heads every night, and I was turning away people for my own time and sanity.
I can't imagine what the carpet is like in the first floor of Slater. Les was down the hall. he was cutting a bunch of people's, and then I was 3-4 doors down.
I handed my business off to a player. I would cut his hair and he would cut mine, and he'd be asking me, how do I do this fade, or what size guard you use for this and all that. I handed it off to players. Yeah.
Nice.
Demo said Plez didn't have as good equipment and he'd cut him sometimes.
I probably did have better equipment from my mom. I remember the blades that edge up. And if you break those, because those didn't sit in those clippers right, they would cut you. I think players might have got me once before. So I'd be telling him, here, you can use mine for that. Yeah.
So you had 5 stars and Pleasant only had 3 stars on Yelp?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, man. I think that's, unless you got anything else for us, we'll wrap it up for you. We appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. It was good to catch up, Ryan.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Love you guys,
Yes.
man. What you guys are doing is great.